something that says Iowa. The people of Iowa welcome you. So we are currently going through Iowa. We just got here and I saw Clear Lake. It looks like a beautiful town, and so of course I always look for things to do. What is it about Clear Lake that attracted people? And lo and behold, what is here? The day the music died. We are now going through the lands of where the crash was that took away the Big Bopper, Buddy Holly, and Richie Valens. As much traveling as we've done, we still haven't mastered planning our trip out. So when we aren't sure exactly where we're going to next, we turn to Google. The Grotto of Redemption? Now that looks interesting. Let's find out if there's any camping nearby. Okay, well it doesn't get much closer than that. And look, $20 a night. Let's do it. While Michael drives, I do the research and map it all out. We are coming in from Minneapolis on Highway 35, and it looks like this trip is going to take us about 65 miles or so on a road less traveled. Wow. I was not expecting this. Look how cool.
It's a lot bigger than I thought it would be. So one man built all of this?
For the most part, yes. I can't wait to explore. Apparently, you just pick a place, get connected, have air conditioning for your pooches, and then walk on over to the gift shop and pay that $20 a night. What a deal.
Mark Twain said something like, "I've never let my schooling interfere with my education." I think we're going to have a lot of learning to do here. Certainly much more than I can absorb in a few minutes. Just look at all these stones.
This shrine of the Grotto of Redemption was mostly the inspiration and life work of Father Paul Dobberstein. He was born in Germany and immigrated to the United States at the age of 20. The story goes that while he was completing his seminary for priesthood, he became deathly ill from pneumonia. During that time, he prayed to the Blessed Virgin Mary and promised, should he live, he would build a shrine in her honor. Before he was 30, he was appointed pastor of St. Peter and St. Paul Catholic Church in West Bend, Iowa, where he would remain for the rest of his life.
For the first decade, he collected and stockpiled rocks, minerals, semi-precious and precious stones. Now that's what I would call planning and patience. Some of the stones came from as far away as Brazil and the Andes Mountains in Argentina, but the majority were gathered and donated from around the United States. In 1912, Father Dobberstein and his assistant, Matt Sorencha, started construction on the Trinity Grotto that is also called Mary's Grotto or the Promise Grotto. At the entrance, petrified wood from South Dakota and Montana was used. If you look above the statue of Mary, note the Star of Bethlehem refers to her son, Jesus' birth. The chair, which you can also see on the grotto wall, symbolizes the seat of God's authority, and above that, St. Peter holds the keys to allow worthy souls passage into heaven. So most of the rocks in the grotto came from a cave nearby North and South Dakota. Ditto with the stalactites and stalagmites. There is also an actual mammoth tooth within the grotto, typically dating back to at least 10,000 years. This first grotto took 5 years to complete, not counting the first 10 years to gather all the stones. Outside the grotto, we see a statue of St. Michael, the protector and defender. Most of the marble statues seen were commissioned in Italy by various sculptors.
Above Christ's Sermon on the Mount sits a large stalagmite that weighs over 2,000 pounds and came from the Carlsbad Caverns in New Mexico before it was declared a national park. This grotto has 8 beatitudes that are written in gold mosaic and inlaid in green malachite copper. The abalone shells are from California.
In this grotto, we find Moses standing over the German question mark that represents a young man asking Jesus, "What shall I do that I might find everlasting life?" Jesus responds, "Keep the commandments." Cleverly, there is a drain hole strategically placed above the stalactites so that the rainwater can come down with a mixture of calcium and magnesium. It's said the stalactite still grows about 1/8 of an inch every 10 years. Notice the rosettes in clusters along the wall. These were made indoors during the winter time when the weather was harsh in Iowa. The statues are made from Carrara marble from Italy and would come at different times when Father Dobberstein would have the money for them, much of it coming from donations. Eventually, funding supported 55 statues.
Within the Paradise Lost grotto, there are 3 marble statues representing Adam and Eve and an angel with a fiery sword that would chase Adam and Eve from the garden. Notice the green snake representing the devil as he tricked Adam and Eve to take the forbidden fruit from the tree of knowledge. The streams and the rivers were made from broken glass bottles. Next, we will go to the Stations of the Cross. The 13th station is the highest point in the grotto. That is Mount Calvary, standing 40 feet tall. In all, there are 14 stations that depict the life of Jesus from the time he was condemned to death until his body was laid in the tomb. The Vitarian mosaics were imported from Italy. Notice that the columns of the first 11 stations were done using jasper to symbolize suffering and death, while the 12th station is made of white stone to symbolize the importance of Jesus' death on the cross. Along the archway, we see rocks of many colors known as Father Dobberstein rocks, made by melting glass and using crayons for color. You can find them throughout the grotto. In the 14th station, we'll find Arimathea and Nicodemus holding the body of Jesus. All 3 figures were sculpted out of using a single block of white Italian marble.
At the Garden of Gethsemane, we find James, Peter, and John on the outside of the grotto. Inside is Jesus, where he went to pray the night before he died, with disciple Judas Iscariot carrying his bag of 30 pieces of silver that he received in payment for betraying Jesus to the Romans. The angel of comfort can be found among the statues. Jesus' hands are laid on a giant Texas agate. These stalactites were reformed naturally over the years from rainwater. Along the stairway, notice the bright roses used. This was Father Dobberstein's way to show us Sorry, you can't get to heaven on a bed of roses.
As we pass the alcove of resurrection, there is a statue of Jesus pointing to the heavens with Mary Magdalene at his feet. Inside of the grotto is an empty tomb symbolizing his victory over sin and death. The angel in the corner is saying, "He has risen, he is not here." In 1946, the grotto was near completion. Father Dobberstein was 74, and he and his assistant had been building for 34 years. Father Grevins was assigned there to help with the clerical work, but it wouldn't be long before he too would be building the grotto. The three of them worked side by side for 8 years. The Grotto of Nazareth was done by both Father Grevins and longtime assistant Matt Skezersky. The grotto was completed in 1955. We actually have Father Grevins to thank for the tours that are still done today. Seriously? How do you think we've learned all this?
The grotto stable in the Bethlehem scene was completed in 1956 using 65 tons of petrified wood that was donated from Montana and the Dakotas. So here is what 80 tons looks like. Allegedly, the world's largest petrified tree can be found in several sections at the Geronimo Trading Post in Holbrook, Arizona. Now that's a lot of wood. Fittingly, a statue of Father Dobberstein was erected in 1992 to commemorate the 80th anniversary from when he began his lifelong work on the grotto. Though he was only 5 foot 6 inches tall, and weighed a mere 135 pounds, he treasured his labor of love to inspire other parishioners, locals, and visitors from all over the world. Other buildings on the grounds include a museum, gift shop, and restrooms were all completed after Father Dobberstein's passing in 1954. Of course, we do have one other masterpiece to share with you, so let's go into his Catholic Church.
The Church of St. Peter and St. Paul was built in 1888. The entire building is beautiful, and in here we will find the Christmas grotto. This grotto represents Jesus' birthplace. Father Doberman built the nativity scene in 1927. We will now hear in Father Grevins' own words what it all represents.
Father Dobberstein was so impressed with the magnificence of this event that he wanted to proclaim it to the whole world. He gathered precious and semi-precious stones from every state in the Union, every country in the world, and assembled them here to glorify the birth of Christ. The large purple stone behind the crib is a Brazilian amethyst. It is one piece, weighs 300 pounds, and is valued over $5,000. The green and the blue in the sky are azurite and malachite copper, which come from the Ural Mountains in Russia, Zuma, Southwest Africa, and Bisbee, Arizona. The brown rock that forms the mountain is scoria from the burned-out coal mines of North Dakota. On the crib is a string of genuine Mexican thyroid pearls. At the base of this grotto, you can see some of the finest agates in the world. An agate is a stone cut in two and highly polished. These agates were cut and polished in Brussels. The statuary here and also in the rest of the grotto outside are carved out of Carrara marble from Italy. Carrara marble is the finest and hardest marble in the world. Look at St. Joseph, the foster father of Jesus. He is almost alive with reverence. Notice the blood vessels in his hands. And look at his hair. When marble speaks, that's art. Now I should like to explain to you the mystical idea that Father Dobberstein tried to express in this grotto. See the lamb above in the mountain? He looks very forlorn, lost. That lamb represents the person who lives in the world, but does not know why he lives here. He doesn't know the purpose of his existence. Just below that lamb is another lamb. He too looks very forlorn, but there is hope for him because the Good Shepherd is looking for him. This lamb represents the person who is sincerely trying to find out what God's plan of salvation is. A third lamb is drinking from a stream. This stream represents a stream of life. This lamb represents the person who has found life through faith, baptism, and the other sacraments. And at the bottom near the crib is the lamb in repose, the lamb at rest and peace. This lamb represents the religious person who spends his time contemplating the Christ child, learning the will of God and doing it, and thereby fulfills the purpose of his existence and finds divine peace and joy.
Well, this was a recommended road stop I did not expect. It was phenomenal. The campground was fantastic. The sights were beyond imaginable. And I just couldn't get over all the beauty within the rocks. It was definitely a labor of love. If you ever get an opportunity to come here, I highly recommend that you do, because what we've showed you is only a very small portion of what there is to see. Travel, my friends. See the world. See the sights. And most of all, enjoy the journey. Until next time, happy trails.
7.
1, 2, 3.
Happy trails to you until we meet again. Okay, that's it. Hit it!